good to see you too, Michelle. We met a very long time ago, actually.
Yeah, in Oakland. You were living in Oakland,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was
Mm-hmm.
living in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember how we connected, but I remember it was before your book came out or right after your book came out. And you made me
Yes.
crepes, I think.
Yes, I made you crepes. That's
And
right.
I'm so
Delicious
good.
crepes with lime and maple syrup.
Yes,
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
And I thought
I
it was
don't remember.
I was so excited. And you signed my book for me, I believe.
Oh, yeah, you were so sweet to come in, and I think you shot some video. And yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember who connected us either, but you were a delight to know then. And I haven't. I mean, I've been following what you're doing, and you're doing so many things. Like I can't believe how busy you are. So
Gotcha.
just to wrap, but you have so many different things. Like you have your podcast that's huge, the Plant Powered People podcast. Then you have your cookbook that you co-authored, right, with Tony, the plant-based
Mhm.
meals on a budget, and you have
We
World of
did
Vegan,
the Friendly Vegan Cookbook, and then
Friendly Vegan
Tony has
Cookbook.
a bunch of other books, including her Plant-Based on a Budget series.
Okay,
Yeah.
and yes, that's right. So and then you have like you do a ton of videos and you do YouTube and you're really amazing at like you create so much content and you do all the things vegan all the time, it seems, and you're like a relatively new mom. So you pack a lot into your life. My goodness.
Yeah, well, a few years ago, I realized therapy is definitely needed when trying to toggle all these things and adding a child into the situation. Yeah, it's a
That's
lot.
so
I've
funny.
grown a team since then, so that's helped a little bit. Well, that's helped it
Yeah.
tremendously, as I'm trying to find some balance. But yeah,
Yeah.
and likewise, you're just constantly doing so much, and I love reading your emails and yeah, it's really fun to be able to connect. I'm gonna have to go find that video that we filmed way back then. It must be on YouTube somewhere.
It's
Maybe I
got to
can
be
put it
on
in the
YouTube
show notes or
somewhere. We
something.
should put in the show notes of this episode. Yeah, from way
Us
back
as
in the
little
day.
babies.
Yep. Yeah. Well, isn't like being able to have a team makes it's like a dream come true. I mean, when I was able to hire a few people, I was like, oh my God, it's the most amazing thing in the world.
It is, and I feel like many people who are entrepreneurs do it way too late, and that was definitely my story. I didn't really mean to like, I was just so excited to be able to work on World of Vegan full time and creating vegan content full time. And I just thought I will always be in pure hustle mode and I will always have to do everything myself and be extremely budget friendly and miss out on all the other things in life because there's just so much work to be done to be able to
Yeah.
survive in that state. And then to see it kind of grow beyond my own expectations to the point where we had the capacity to start bringing on help and support was very transformational and made me realize, oh my gosh, you can do all the cool things that you love, like your work can be your passion, and you can do it in a way that's sustainable and not going to burn you out.
Yeah. Key. So you can keep doing it. So you can keep
Mhm.
doing it. Yes, that burnout is real. That's for sure. So speaking of like, okay, so you do, obviously you're quite passionate about what you do. I want to talk a little bit about like, when did you first become vegan and what prompted that?
I became vegan in college but I feel like I've always been vegan at heart. So I went vegetarian when I was 8 years old, which I was just kind of slow on the uptake I thought meat was named after animals. I don't know. There was like a conversation at the dinner table and my mom commented how the lamb we were eating was like the lamb I watched in the movie. And I was like, "What?" And when that connection formed in my head, I was like, "I am not going to eat an animal." And my mom said, "Well, there's a word for that. It's called vegetarian." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm vegetarian." So at that moment on, I was vegetarian. Um, and then I started I think I might have gotten some PETA leaflets or something that was like really all that was going on in the speaking up for animals scene at the time when I was a kid. And that made me realize like factory farming is happening. And, it started as a personal decision. Just, I do not want to take the life of somebody else. I don't want to eat animals for my own. That was my choice. But once I learned about like how horrific the factory farming industry was, then I became a little young animal advocate activist. um, and yeah, I was vegetarian from then through college, and I never really, even though I grew up in Oakland, which is like a very progressive kind of hub of the vegetarian vegan scene, I never knew anyone growing up who was vegetarian or definitely not vegan until after I was in college, other than people who had like gone vegetarian after meeting me. So, um, yeah, it was interesting. I didn't have much outside of me to like look up to, but I
Mm.
would create my own avenues of advocacy. So I did a lot of work that was maybe not the most effective. Like I'd have bake sales and raise money and donate them to animal organizations. But yeah, in college, I think I started getting a lot more strategic about how can I make the biggest impact
Mm.
um, to tackle these just huge issues.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting that you said that you didn't really have anybody, like there weren't a lot of at that time a lot of
Like role
there weren't
models.
people accessible to us, right? Because there wasn't the internet really. I mean, it was just kind of like starting out, and there wasn't any role models at all. And it's, I mean, we've come such a long way, like thinking about it. And I too, I mean, I've actually never eaten meat in my life, and I think back on some of the stuff that was available, just some of the food that was available in the grocery stores or even restaurant options back then, and how I remember getting such weird looks by servers or people that I would order food from when I ordered something without meat back when I was very, very young. And just thinking about how far we've come and how accessible now. It's, I mean, this way of eating is everywhere. And through
Yeah.
technology especially, I mean, it's really, really changed so much, not only the accessibility but also the way that vegan meat is produced, and all this. So can you talk a little bit about that, about sort of the advances of this way of eating, and just from your experience of being like 8 to now? I mean, this is a big question, but some of the things that you've seen really drastically change.
Yeah, well, I actually started creating YouTube videos because of my experience feeling like I had to pave the path on my own and not having a lot of role models or people around me who were in it with me. And that's how everyone back in the day, when you went plant based or you went vegan, plant based as a word wasn't even really there. It was like if you went vegetarian or you went vegan, usually you did it alone. And so I wanted to, as these social media platforms started springing up, be just a friend and a resource for people who were anywhere in the world and who wanted to make these compassionate changes and lifestyle habits that were different from everyone around them, and to feel like they had a friend in it and someone to kind of help them skip some of the struggles that I had gone through. And like
Mm,
today, that's absolutely like, I don't think I would ever be in this line of work today because it wasn't an extreme need. Like now there's so many people doing it. It's like almost content overwhelm. Sometimes I'm like, am I needed here right now anymore?
mm,
Um, but that's so beautiful. Like now there's just so many voices. And when people decide they want to make a change, they're not alone. Like usually they have friends that have already done it or kids that have done it, or, there's like a huge network right around them. Um, and we see that for people who make a change like eating plant-based or eating vegan, the biggest reason that people go back is the challenge of not having community around them and the challenge of social situations. It's not the food, it's not the health. Like that's all wonderful. It's just inconvenient to have no one around you who really gets it and to not be able to eat the same things as all the people around you. So as that's evolving and changing, I imagine we'll continue to see like a rapidly growing population
mm.
of people who are able to make this choice, because the hardest thing will no longer be the hardest thing, because now there is community and now you have people at your event or at your family dinner who are also choosing the same things as you. So that part's really exciting to me. Obviously, the advancements in food technology is so exciting. I talk a lot about being an imperfect vegan because anyone who's vegan is. There's no such thing as a perfect vegan. But one example is I recently adopted 2 cats, and cats are obligate carnivores. I'm feeding them meat. And in my head, I'm just so cannot wait for lab grown meat. I don't want to eat it, but would I feed it to my cats? Amazing, perfect
Mm.
solution. Like they need meat. Now you can eat the meat without hurting anybody. So things like that are really, really, really exciting. And they are making it possible for people who have no interest in eating plant-based or going vegan or the animals or the health or the planet, whatever, to make the choice, because it's just hopefully going to be the easy choice that's there, that's maybe going to be more affordable and a little bit healthier.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a really good point. I hear that a lot in our community as well. Like, people are really into eating this way, and they really love how they feel, and they love the changes that they experience, and it's more in line with their values. And They feel really good about this change, and then they get so defeated and deflated almost when they go to a gathering and nobody else is eating this way, and people have a ton of questions, and they feel kind of like backed into a corner. And I'm just curious, like, since you brought that up, what advice do you give people who find themselves in that situation?
Yeah, it really does. When you're gonna make a lifestyle choice that's different from anybody or most of the people around you, it it I think strengthens you as a person because you're forced to build a backbone. People are gonna say things to you. Like for me growing up, people threw meat in my face. They'd tease me all the time. They'd whatever, and like none of it bothered me because I really understood my why and it meant a lot to me. So it's like I don't expect people to get it, but I think it's important to know what you're doing, know why you're doing it, and to be really solid in what you believe yourself. And then whatever anyone else is saying can just kind of roll off your back. You kind of learn that skill. But of course, like we are kind of tribal people. Like we want to be in community, we want to relate to each other, and we want to be able to have conversations that are like positive. We want to feel heard and understood, and for people to feel heard and understood. And so I think a big thing to keep in mind is to just try and find connection in those conversations. Like if you're at a dinner table and someone's like, well, why aren't you eating the meat? Or why are you like, that's not really the moment to go talking about factory farming and all these things that's going to create a divide and make them feel bad. And I've done this so many times and I never walk away feeling good from those conversations. So I think there's like a way to, it's kind of like self-care, not feeling like you need to be an activist at the dinner table.
Mm.
It's rarely the effective time to make a change. So, to just keep it simple. And if someone said that, I'd be like, I don't need animals. I can, send you more information later. Or, you know, I I love plant-based food. I'm all good. Just keeping it simple, keeping it light around the dinner table, because I think that can be one of the most stressful, um, anxiety producing, and kind of like it gets a little can get a little antagonistic. And then
Mhm.
when people throw insults or throw like kind of shade your way, it's almost like not responding to it or not letting it hit, not laughing at it, but just kind of ignoring it and moving on really sends a message. Because I will tell you, if you try and like tease someone and then there's no response, like you're like, I don't want to do that again. It didn't feel good.
Awkward,
It
like
feels so
super awkward.
awkward. And there's nothing more motivating than than to avoid awkwardness for most people. So
Yeah,
that kind of like self-corrects itself if you just ignore it. Um,
yeah.
and then I mean all the tips of just if you're going anywhere, you want to make sure you have something to eat. So bring something to eat. Make one of Molly's recipes, like whatever, and share amazing food. Make sure that just you're set. You kind of can develop a little bit more of an independent mindset where even if I go to a wedding, if I go anywhere, I know I'm good no matter what the situation around me is. So I don't really have to worry about it. I don't have to feel bad if what's served is something I can't eat or won't eat. You know, I eat my energy bar. That's what I was expecting anyway.
So what is something that you might bring to, let's say, a birthday party or a wedding when you know that there's not going to be any vegan food, any plant-based food? What are some of your like go-to things that you would pack and like stow away in your purse for when you need them?
Yeah, for me, I mean, trail mix is great. Like plant-based energy bars are awesome. Anything that's like small and not messy. Um, dried fruit. Yeah, nuts, even chocolate, like a little chocolate thing for if there's gonna be
Speaking my
cake or you
language,
just want
yes.
something sweet. So, but for me, it's like not such a big deal. But now that I have a kid, if we go to a birthday party and he's growing up vegan and there's going to be birthday cake there, and I don't want him to feel like he's in just a place of can't have this, can't have that. Like I
Mm.
really don't want him to feel I want him to feel really positive around it all. So we go and get those little vegan cupcakes, or sometimes I'll make some, but I think Rubicon has them at Whole Foods and they're vegan, and a little 4-pack, and we keep them in the freezer. And if there's a birthday party, we just bring one of those with us, and he's always been really happy. Um, and he'll ask, like the thing with kids too is he knows he's vegan, he's proud to be vegan, he doesn't wanna eat animals, and so he'll go up to, like, the mom at the birthday party and be like, "Is this cake vegan?" And she's like, "No, it's not," and he'll be like, "Okay," and I'll be like, "Well, I have one over here for you, we're all good." So,
It's the
um
new generation. You see, it's going to be so much different when Graham is like your age. Could you imagine how much it's going to change? Because it's this new generation of vegans raising vegans now, or plant-based people raising plant-based people. It's really
It is
exciting.
pretty wild. I feel like I'm pretty early in it where there's not a ton of, I mean, well, there's hundreds of thousands of vegan parents, but there's not millions of vegan parents, I don't think yet. And I think that's coming. Like in the next 10 years, it's going to be this wave of people who are vegan and are becoming parents. And yeah, I mean, the birthday party thing is kind of cool too, because uh, it, on the Not Perfect Vegan, we actually have an article on World of Vegan that says, I let my vegan kid eat not vegan birthday cake. So,
Mhm.
and it's fine. No big deal. Like if they don't know if it's vegan or not, it's very confusing. You don't see animals in cake. And now like my son eats cheese. He'll say, I eat eggs. I eat vegan eggs. And he'll say, yeah, I eat cheese that looks exactly the same. So it's like a little bit confusing for a young mind. And you have to remember the bigger picture of like we're trying to instill values of, compassion and choosing kind things. Making it super, super rigid and trying to be a perfectionist when you're parenting is impossible anyway. Being vegan is impossible anyway. So letting those lines blur a little bit for some people can make being 99.999% vegan a million times easier in those situations where if you feel too awkward, like you don't have the chutzpah to bring your own cupcake to a party because you feel like that's embarrassing. You could be the parent that's, we're vegan, but all birthday cake is vegan in our eyes. I know a lot of
Right.
vegans who say all movie theater popcorn is vegan, which it
Uh-huh.
almost always is, but they just don't want to have to ask every single time. And the impact on animals is zero. It's not, there is none. So when you're
Mhm.
thinking about the actual impact, you want to think about the bigger picture rather than the like specifics.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. I talk about that a lot, and I think that's something that helps people stick to this way of eating by giving
Yeah.
themselves just that little bit of wiggle room, because there are going to be situations where it is going to be much more difficult to stick to it. Um, and a lot of people get trapped in that all or nothing thinking. Well, if I can't do it 100%, then I may as well not do it. And that's
Yeah.
like, you know, that is so much is lost when that happens. So I think that that's spot on, and I really agree and believe that as well.
Yeah.
When I when I was little, when you said movie popcorn, my mom and dad used to make these big batches of wonderful popcorn with nutritional yeast and some Bragg's amino acids on them, some like that spray
Oh,
bottle,
geez.
like really, really hippie. And my mom would bring a big bag and then put this bag of popcorn in there. And I was always really nervous that we were going to get caught. That was my main concern. But so I always smuggle my own popcorn into movie theaters. Like
I love that.
I've always done it, just because it's so much better with nutritional yeast and a little bit of Bragg's on there. It's so
Well,
good.
and better for you, like animals aside, because I think most of the movie theater, it's butter flavoring that actually has no butter in it. So most of it is vegan, but it is so bad for you. Like
Oh
what
yeah, I
is
know.
in those movie theater popcorn is so awful. And nooch, salt, garlic powder, popcorn tastes just as good. So yeah, oh my gosh, you're probably saving your own life by smuggling that in. Good call, not
And then
worth it.
yeah, and I think like growing up with that, it was always like, okay, we do things a little bit differently, but that was normal for me. So it kind of
Right.
normalized like bringing your own cupcakes to the party. Like, yeah, we don't eat that, so we're going to bring our own. But I think for a lot of people, that's a very foreign concept because for most people, it's like there's just, you fit in and you eat what everybody else is eating. And so it takes
Yeah.
some courage and it takes some bravery to step away from that and say, oh, I brought my own. And it does and I think it is a process for people too to get to that point where they feel comfortable or not. And I think for some people, keep in mind, you might not always feel comfortable doing that. You might be awkward and embarrassed, and maybe that's okay. Like, if
Yes.
it's important
Yeah.
enough to you, like, is it okay for you to kind of feel awkward or feel embarrassed and just do it anyway? That's the
Yeah.
other
Oh, and then there's the other side of people, which was I was such a timid kid. I was so shy. I was so embarrassed. I would like, bleh. um, I'm honestly so glad that I went vegan and I was so passionate about it because I think it helped me learn to break out of that. But
thing.
you could also just not eat. You're the person in the theater not eating popcorn, but that
Right.
discomfort is, I'd say, the negative side of like that's a trap you're putting yourself in. So instead, push
Yeah.
yourself to be brave and to show up you're with your own popcorn. And I mean, shoot, if you went to a movie theater and were like, hey, do you have vegan popcorn? No. Well, I brought my own because you don't have vegan popcorn.
Right.
They're not going to be like, leave it at the door. We don't want you here. So that's the other thing too. And I think it does also change when you're bringing something for yourself that can feel, I know that feeling can be a little awkward. But when you're bringing something to share, it kind of takes away the awkwardness. You're like, hey, I brought this to share. That's almost never awkward, and your biggest risk is you won't have any for yourself because everyone's going to eat it so fast.
Right. Yes. I've actually used that in the airport before because whenever I travel, I always bring a big bag of food with me and like lots of snacks and sandwiches and this and that. And I've had some people in the TSA who are like really questioning, like, what is all of
Yeah.
this? Like, it's just strange. And I just say, hey, look, I eat a specific way and I can't, and I have a really long trip and nothing I eat I can find here. And so I really have to bring my own. So I've had these talks to them and they're like, oh, okay. And they, usually it's been fine, but sometimes you kind of have to play that card. So
Yeah. One time a
yeah.
TSA took away vegan Nutella when it first came out, and I
Oh.
was trying to bring some home from Portland. And I still will never forget it. I was like, but it's vegan. You don't understand. It literally doesn't exist on the planet. Yeah, no, that's a great tip though.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your work with animal sanctuaries. And I want to
Oh,
talk a bit about that because I think the logistics of how animal sanctuaries work, and specifically, I mean, there's many of them and they're great. And there's a couple even here on Maui. And if you look, like there are great things happening with these sanctuaries, but I'm just kind of curious about how it works and specifically how do the animals typically get to sanctuaries and like how does that all look? Can you enlighten us on this topic?
yeah. My first time going to an animal sanctuary was Farm Sanctuary, which is like kind of the first mainstream animal sanctuary that sprouted up. And there was a location in New York and one in LA. And it's Gene Bauer, the co-founder, like started, I think, out of his van handing out vegan food and then ended up rescuing animals that had fallen off a slaughterhouse truck and ended up starting a sanctuary. But now, I mean, in the same way that animal shelters in the city are just people will find an animal on the street and it's like, what do we do with it? This is a homeless animal who's sick or injured or doesn't have whatever, to call an animal shelter. Well, what happens if you find a farmed animal? They're not going to take those at your local city shelter. You call an animal sanctuary. And those situations, maybe not in the city so much, but if you are in like farmland, farm territory, you'd be surprised how often there's like a rogue cow that had fallen off a slaughterhouse bound truck in the street, or situations that happen where like there'll be a flood or a fire in a building with 100,000 hens or something, and they're just no one's there to bleh, doesn't doesn't make sense to put any of our effort rescuing the animals, so they will literally let the animals die. And that's when all the animal sanctuary people come and get volunteers to help get out all the animals, and then they have to find sanctuaries to place them to. um it can be like so many different situations. um but yeah, I say, and then okay, there are some. I don't think this happens that often, but they have animal auctions where you'll auction animals off for slaughter, and sometimes they'll have like these 4-H programs where a kid will raise an animal and then auction them off, and they're ultimately going to end up in the slaughterhouse, and then they have a change of heart. So I've seen every once in a while there'll be like a sanctuary to step in to help this animal have a peaceful existence, rather than getting sent to slaughter. There's so many different kind of tracks that can lead an
Yeah.
animal to sanctuary, but those are the luckiest animals. I mean, they're usually near a very not pretty fate and have endured a lot of trauma and tragedy. And then they land at a sanctuary where the whole purpose is to allow them to live in peace in freedom, to be cared for, to have their needs met, to have care provided when they're injured or sick. And it's just really beautiful to kind of see those animals start to trust again and get comfortable
Mhm.
again and step up to people and give that experience also to people to be able to come face to face with a cow or a pig. Cows are so special because they're so huge and they're so gentle and they're oftentimes just so forgiving and peaceful. And just going right up to them and putting your hand on their nose, it's kind of like a horse where it just feels like magical. I don't know,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
healing. Um, yeah, sanctuaries are great.
Yeah. I think it's really, yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I think it's in, I think that everybody should go like experience that and should visit one if they have that available to them. I heard there was I forget who it was, a podcast I was listening to, or maybe a reel or a book. I don't remember exactly. It was a few years ago, and it was a vegan doctor guy, and he basically said, you know, when he transitioned to a plant based diet, like he got a lot healthier and things started to improve physically, and then he kind of slowly went off from it, and it wasn't until he um, watched one of the documentary, maybe it was Earthlings, some documentary that really like showcased how, you know, the cruelty done to animals with factory farming and any kind of farming really. And he said that that's what got him to go back to eating vegan, and why he will never not, you know, sway from that again. And I think that so many people, especially in my community, they start eating this way specifically for health reasons because, you know, they're getting a little bit older, they've eaten kind of the standard American diet their whole life, and now like they're having these health issues, maybe they're pre-diabetic, or their cholesterol is really high, or they've had some scares with the doctor and now they're looking to like clean up their eating. um, but there's this other big part to it too, and I don't talk a lot about this in what we do. I know personally for me, it's, I grew up not eating animals, and I always felt like I just couldn't imagine doing it. It just never felt like something, I'm like confused by it. I'm like, huh? It's like somebody asking me to eat a shoe. Like, but you don't eat shoes. Like, it just feels very strange, right? But not everybody is like that. And so I think that visiting these animal sanctuaries and connecting with these animals in that way, because where else can you do that really? Right. I mean, if it's for specifically farm animals, there's, you know, when you, unless you live in a very rural place and whatever, but most people aren't going to connect with a cow and like be able to pet a cow's head and connect with these animals. I was at a sanctuary here on Maui a couple years ago, and I was able to hug this huge turkey, and I was like, whoa, first of all, turkeys are massive. I didn't realize how big they were. And like, they're beautiful animals. And it kind of changes something in you. So I really encourage everybody who's listening to go to an animal sanctuary and to experience that. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation. I really appreciate it. And if there's anything else you want to kind of follow up to with all of that, go for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. If okay, so on World of Vegan, we have kind of a Rolodex of animal sanctuaries, and it shows that all the ones that exist in different states and even different countries. So if you just go to worldofvegan.com and then search sanctuary, you can find what's near you. You can also just, of course, go on Google and look up for an animal sanctuary in your city or your state. They're worth the drive. They're usually a little bit further out, like kind of in farmland. So it might be, 45 minutes, an hour, but there's usually sanctuaries that are kind of peripheral to many major cities. Like now there's hundreds, if not thousands of sanctuaries opening up all around the world, which is so, so exciting. And yeah, I think in terms of making a change for health reasons, which I think is how most people these days are coming into plant-based eating, which is so wonderful and it's so powerful for health. The hard part is that when you make a decision for your health, sometimes it can be hard to stick to it all of the time. Like I all the time say, I want to eat healthier so that I don't feel like crud or because I know I should or whatever. And I'll do it for a bit. And it's really hard to stick to because the one that gets hurt if I mess up is just me. And I
Mm.
wish that I cared more enough about that to be really good to my body all the time. But it's not, and no one else gets hurt. So I just like, I'm like, it's sometimes I let it slide. But when you can find a why that's a little bit deeper rooted, and it could be, our planet, it could be for your kids wanting to leave a planet that, it could be for animals but when it's about someone else, it's a little harder to step to let it slide. Like, it hurts more. Like, it hurts
Mhm.
my soul if I'm like, um, make a decision that I know is kind of hurting somebody else, or could be causing harm to someone else. And I think it's really powerful. I've seen so many people who stepped into plant-based eating or more plant-forward eating, um, that never thought about animals or the planet. And as they then like watched a documentary or learned more about some things, it kind of anchored their decision that they had already made for their health. But the thing that it does is it makes it so much easier then to practice, like in practice in your daily life, make those choices, because it's not so on you, only affecting you. It just kind of makes the more wise you can like build up, the easier it makes it for you to make choices that are good for you and good for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really well said. And for our health, it's like, one, let's say, chicken burrito, we're not going to feel the immediate, I mean, we might get kind of sleepy and not going to feel so great, but we're not going to like have any immediate danger of like, life threatening things from one burrito. So I think that that's also, another reason why people tend to change when it's like they feel like they don't have much of a choice. And it's the accumulative effect of eating this way that kind of generally prompts that. So you said it really, really well. Like, it kind of anchors that decision to have a bigger why, and maybe connecting with animals could do that for people. Right.
Yeah.
But I think that you have to open yourself up to that and be like ready for that. Cause it can be really hard too. It can be very sad and very heartbreaking, really. And so I think it's another instance where you have to be brave and courageous and when you're ready to look at this stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. I also think for people who are wanting to make a change, something to consider is just like the mental weight and load of decision making. So if you're like, if I'm like, I'm going to try and eat healthier, then everything I'm eating, I'm like, is this healthy? Is it blah, blah, blah? Like, there's not a definitive, oh yeah, I eat this, I don't eat this. And so it
Hmm.
ends up being kind of harder in every decision that you make and more taxing on your brain and your emotional energy. And
Yeah.
when you create a line that's just, okay, I eat I don't eat animals. I eat plants, or I don't, like, it could be whatever. It doesn't have to be that. It can be, some people choose other things, but it's much easier. You don't have to like weigh the decision every time you sit down to eat. So there's like there's the not being perfect, but then there's also like for your own mental sanity and keeping things just easier for your brain and less taxing. Sometimes it can be helpful to be like, okay, this is what I want to be eating. These are my like anything over here that's not this is a cool food, and then this is kind of where I draw the line for myself. But yeah, everybody's different in terms of what works for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, but that's good. I mean, I think that could be a good exercise for people to just decide ahead of time, right? So
Yeah.
that they have that, so that when they come up, to those situations where it's like they're stressed or they have to choose or they are overwhelmed or they, are in a situation where this food is presented and there's no other choices, like that's already decided ahead of time. So it makes it easier, right? I mean, it does take a little bit of like planning and getting to know yourself too. This is such a journey about getting to know yourself and deepening your relationship to yourself, I think, too,
Yeah.
which is super cool. So
Yeah.
okay, so I'm wondering uh, what your favorite like go-to meal is, something that's quick, easy, and you find yourself doing a lot of these days.
Yeah. You mentioned burritos, and burritos are like a big one through my whole life that have just been so easy. And I feel like that's the quick, easy, and healthy ish. Because if I can just have, rice made in the fridge or quinoa, any grain, and then I have tortillas on hand, then I'm a pretty lazy cook, even though that's my job, but I'll just take a can of beans or refried beans or whatever, pop them on there. If I want to sprinkle some cheese or whatever, I will, and add some veggie. I mean, like, you can get fancy, but honestly, just like tortilla, um, rice, refried beans, and guacamole. maybe some salsa. It takes 3 seconds to put together and it's delicious. Smoothies are another big one for me. I'm a pastaholic, but I mean, I grew up when I went vegetarian when I was 8. My parents were like, "Okay, but you make your food." So I pretty much ate cereal and pasta because I was not adventurous in the kitchen. Um, and I survived on that for the longest time, and ramen. And so it's been kind of a branching out from that, from going forward, trying to figure out, um, expanding my palate. It's
Yeah.
fun and exciting, but it's not something that was like innate to me growing up because I just was a very simple eater. Also,
Mm.
like noodle jars with peanut sauce, and then a whole
Mm.
bunch of like just finely shaved or chopped veggies. Purple cabbage is a favorite of mine. Like it's so beautiful in any food. I really am like a eat with my eyes type of person. So if I can
Yeah.
add color to my meal, that's that's always nice. Yeah. I also love
Per-
soups. Soups are staples.
and so easy. Soups are so
Yeah.
easy too. Yeah.
Yep.
I agree with you about the purple cabbage. I was just talking about that. I actually put them in my smoothies a lot.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Yeah, they
Cool.
make such beautiful smoothies. Yeah, I think, and for like, I had to stop eating gluten like a few years ago because I had this like skin condition come up, and I was so sad. I was like, oh, have it be anything but gluten because I love sourdough and I love pasta and I love tortillas, but it was that. I mean, there was like some other things I changed as well. Like I stopped using fluoride and changed my skincare products, and I got it cleared up. But for those of you who might be gluten free, you could do a burrito, but just make it a bowl. And like what I like to do is heat up a corn tortilla on the side, and it's just as easy and yummy too. So, and as far as pasta, there's so many gluten free pastas out there too. Like some
Yep.
there used to be like no options. That's another thing that's really come a long way. There's like
Sweet
pasta
potato
made from
noodles, are those
every.
gluten free?
Yep,
Have you
they
had
are.
sweet potato noodles, the, like, glassy ones?
Uh-huh. Yep,
Those
I
are so
have.
good.
Yep,
You
I've
could do a
had those.
sushi burrito too. Like, you could wrap it
Mm, yeah.
in nori,
Uh-huh.
and you
Super
can do,
yummy.
like, a wrap. Where did I learn that? Oh my god, I know where I met you for the first time. It was, what was the restaurant that was open in Berkeley?
Nature's Express.
Nature's Express, and they
Yeah.
had these, collard wraps
Yes.
where they'd,
Yep.
like, blanch the collard wrap and wrap it, like, oh, that's such a strong memory for me, and I still feel like that's the most beautiful burrito wrapping, is
So
blanched
beautiful.
collard green.
Yes, yes, I do that a lot in our meal plans and our recipes. That it's the most beautiful way. And the thing is, with collards, like some people will do them raw, but they don't really hold together as well. But when you
Yeah.
blanch them, they become very pliable and flexible, and you can really, it's like you can
You
like
get, like, a
legit
tight
wrap it.
wrap.
Yeah, like a tight wrap. So
Yeah.
good, so good. I
Yeah.
feel like there's so many people who, when they start eating this way or think about transitioning to eating this way, they're already feeling defeated because of what they are going to avoid eating. And they're like, oh, but what am I going to eat? It's like, I can't have this, this, and this, or I'm choosing not to have this, this, and this. So what am I going to eat? And I just want to say, like, no, like your mind is going to be blown. There's so many options that you're going to be eating more things than you ever did before. Right. It's just there's so many options, and it's like limitless possibilities and combinations and beautiful food that looks amazing and that feels so good. It's like I just want to tell people, don't worry, that's not a problem. Don't worry about that. Take that off your worry list.
Yeah, focus on adding and not subtracting. I feel like
Yeah.
that is a, I don't want to say mistake because, like, journeys are journeys and we learn. And I'm glad I had all my struggles. But I did think when I went vegan, I thought I'm doing this because I don't want to contribute to the dairy industry anymore or factory farming. And I will sacrifice for the rest of my life and not eat most food. I just had such a downer look at it. And because of that, I wasn't really looking for all of the amazing other foods out there that I'd never
Mm.
explored. I was kind of like eating cereal and ramen and forcing myself to switch from milk to soy milk. And it was like kind of, I mean, I was fine with it because the decision was made and it meant something to me. But within a few years, I realized, oh my God, there's like a literal whole side of the grocery store I've been ignoring with a million plants I've never tried before. And just it's such a wide open world. And if you focus instead on what you want to add in, like add a new food you've never tried it before, add a new recipe you've never tried before each week, rather than what you're taking away, it becomes so much more joyful. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of it, like part of making something sustainable. It has to be joyful, it has to be fun and enjoyable, and that also is going to inspire people around you too. And so you'll start to see people around you have an affinity toward the same foods, which just makes that community part so much easier.
Yeah, so true. And I think we're so easy, it's so easy for humans to get stuck in a food rut. And I think for people eating the standard American diet, it's like you find people eating the same few things over and over again. And it makes sense because humans like consistency, like our brain is wired to like consistency, but also our brains are wired to enjoy new experiences and new things. So if you can make that leap from like, okay, getting out of your comfort zone a little bit to like trying kohlrabi, for example, or Romanesco, or like picking up a different kind of squash that you've never done before, that can really bring a lot of joy and a lot of like newness to it, which is inspiring. And there's so many new
Yeah.
things to discover that like having that, like having the process, finding joy in the process, it's such a beautiful thing.
And I think a great place to start with that is picking, like, go and pick a bunch of recipes that look interesting to you, print them off, and then each week add the grocery items to your grocery shopping list or whatever. But because I
Yeah.
made the mistake also of, I would go to a farmer's market and get things that looked interesting, and then I wouldn't know how to cook with them. I
Mm.
wouldn't know how I would be using them, and they would go bad. And so it made me less likely to get unfamiliar items going forward. And I'm someone who still to this day, I fall in food ruts very easily. I just kind of can't be bothered with, I just don't have time. I don't have much time or space or mental
Yeah.
energy left in my life to like get creative or do the fun part of grocery shopping and cooking and finding recipes. So I just do what is as normal and easy. But it does, you feel the rut. Like you feel,
Yeah.
you feel the rut of it, and eventually you'll start to crave something different. And
Yeah.
before it starts to feel not good, lean into that craving of something different and find a way to find it. One of the things that I did recently is I got one of the like meal subscription services, which they'll send you like packets of all the ingredients to make a recipe, and the recipe, you pick your recipes, and then you cook it in your home. And I used to think these were so silly, and they still are for many people who can easily go grocery shopping and have the time to plan their meals and everything. But I was just feeling in a rut, and I felt like I didn't have the capacity to get myself out of it. Like I didn't have the time to do it myself.
Mm.
And these were so helpful because it got me cooking in new ways. Like, oh, throw the chickpeas in the toaster oven with some salt and then add that to a salad, and like things I wasn't thinking about
Yeah.
doing that were so simple. So it kind of built my repertoire of cooking techniques that then I could add to just my normal everyday cooking, and also built my stash of recipes that I'm like, oh my God, I want to make this again and again and again. And it's so
Yeah.
simple, and I can just get the great ingredients at the grocery store next time. So that's like a kind of expensive way to go about it. But I think the budget friendly way is find some recipes,
Yeah.
add them to your grocery shopping list, and just, yeah, start making some new things. And
Oh,
almost
yeah.
all the blogs these days, like you can easily print out the recipe. And a lot of people don't do that. They don't think to actually print it out. And that is such a game changer. Like I have a stack of recipes from my own blog next to me. And I'll kind of like, that's where I'll pull from when I'm putting together my grocery lists. Um,
Yeah.
and that's been so helpful. And then they're right there in the kitchen. It's like having a cookbook next to you.
Yeah. Yeah, because this way of eating, I mean, it does require time in the kitchen, and there's definitely ways to shortcut it and spend less time in the kitchen. But it does require that you get in the kitchen and familiarize yourself with some ingredients that you may not normally have interacted with if you are new to this way of eating. So yeah, embrace the kitchen, but also know, great reminder, like there's varying ways to do this. It can get very complicated and very fancy and like, restaurant quality, or it can be as simple as a rice and bean burrito, and like they're both awesome.
Yeah, and you have to set yourself up for realistic success. So for me, that's knowing I need to have a couple freezer meals in the freezer for when I literally cannot be bothered. I need to have cereal in my cabinet when I don't have time for any kind of fancy breakfast. I need to have um I need to have, like, let's say I want a really filling dinner and I can't be bothered to cook, and I'm uninspired by everything in my house. Well, okay, Chipotle is down the street. It's not my
Mhm.
dream meal, but I actually really love it. And it's a big amount of food. It's got your beans in there and your veggies. Like I have an easy place I can turn if I need to go out and grab something. And I think that's something big for people too, is they're used to eating out, whether it's fast food or drive-throughs or nice restaurants. Find what works for you that's easy, that will like kind of scratch that itch for you,
Yeah.
that you'll have a great option for, that's plant-based for you there. So that's, I think, helpful too.
Yeah, I miss Chipotle actually. There's no Chipotle here on Maui. There's not much of anything here on Maui actually. It's a bit
Except
of
for
a,
all of the best produce ever.
all the best produce and also
The best
some
fruit.
pretty awesome beaches, and like we have like an amazing farmers market that's just out of this world. So there's a lot of things going for, but we don't have a Chipotle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, one other tip just for like talking about setting yourself up for success and kind of meal prep. And my friend Allison Rivers Sampson taught me this a while ago, and I was like, my mind was kind of blown. But it's creating a DIY salad bar in your fridge, but it could be like a grain bowl bar, whatever. But so you have a purple cabbage, and you could take that out and cut little pieces and shred it up anytime you want to add it to any of your dishes, which it goes great on literally everything, apparently, even smoothies.
Mhm.
And then carrots, like you got to shred your carrots. But if instead you come home with your ingredients and you pull out your food processor and you shred the whole cabbage all at once and stick it in a big mason jar, pop it in your fridge. It's good for a week. Like shred your carrots, pop it in the fridge. You could even do like more interesting ingredients like a beet. You can shred that, pop it in the fridge, slice some stuff so that it's all there and ready. And when you're making your grain bowl or your pasta dish or what burrito, whatever, you can just go and like layer some of those veggies on really easy without having to do the work. Or salads, which a lot of people feel uninspired by, but that's the way to make it easy and yummy, without a lot of effort. So those meal prep days are key, and I need to remind
Yes.
myself of that too.
Yes, yes, yes. Those batching the veggies. I mean, because really, if you don't have those when you're really hungry, you're not going to add the cabbage or the carrots because they're just in your
No.
fridge in this big thing of cabbage. And you're just going to be like, well, I guess I won't add the cabbage. But it does. I
Yeah.
mean, it really is setting your future self up for eating all the veggies that you buy and then not, tossing them out when they get bad. So I think that's a really, yeah, I talk about that a lot. And I love making like a salad base, like chopping up the cabbage and the lettuce and all of the really hearty stuff that can be done beforehand and having it be in a big tub. And then when I'm ready to have my salad, then I just pop that in a bowl, add some, I always make some like tamari roasted like pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds, put those on top, put some chickpeas, put a dressing, and like it's so good and so healthy and delicious and you feel so good afterwards. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, definitely, some advanced prep, game changer
Yeah. And I didn't
for
even know,
sure.
like with a food processor, I used it kind of as a blender. I didn't know that that thing that goes on the top is a shredder. I think a lot of
Yes.
people don't know that that's a shredding and grating device. So you can just
Yeah.
shove carrots down there and you get shredded carrots. You can shove, whatever down there and it shreds it for you. It's so
Hell
handy.
yeah. I did like latkes the other day and just did
Ooh,
that with potatoes. Like, so I'm not grating them for an hour, right? It's so
yeah,
much
slicing
faster.
your knuckles.
And like the right tools too can really help a lot. Like I don't have a ton of kitchen gadgets, but speaking of food processors, the one that I have also has a blade where you can just slice things really thin, but like in circles. And so one of my most favorite things to do is marinate some beets, but like shred them very, very thin and then marinate them and then bake them. And it's like a pastrami sandwich. It's like really thin
Ooh.
slices of beet that you can just put in the fridge and then layer on a yummy sandwich or a wrap or a salad. So good. But those little
I've seen
tools can be really
I have
helpful.
those circle things in my food processor thing, but I don't know how they use it or what it's for. I'll have to look that up. That's fascinating. I wonder if that's
Yes. I love it. And like you've been eating this way for a long time, so have I, but like there's still shit to learn. Like we don't know everything.
Mhm.
And that's really exciting when you know that like there's still stuff to learn.
Yeah, I mean, it's what keeps any relationship exciting and interesting, right? It's just you gotta constantly be finding new things that are different and exciting, and there's stuff to learn. And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the world of food, it's cool because you can start simple and then you keep the more you learn about healthy food that you can add in
Mhm.
that you realize, oh my God, banana and ice cream is even more delicious than ice cream and it's
Mm.
actually healthy. I can eat it for breakfast. And so as you kind of progress, it just gets easier and easier to want to choose the healthy food because it tastes even better when you learn how to do it right. It just takes a while to get there
Yeah.
from, I think, the standard American
For sure, for sure.
eating
I've been
options.
experimenting with making bread, specifically buckwheat bread.
Ooh.
Super easy recipe. So that's been really fun. I've also been experimenting making vegan yogurt, which has been great, and different kind of brownies using potatoes and stuff. So like there's just so I really love this way of eating, and I love connecting with people who also love it. And for you, I know it's and it's not just a way of eating; it is a lifestyle, right? And there's so many reasons to do it. So I want to ask you right now, what is something, food or not, but what is something that is kind of like lighting you up right now? Is there something that you kind of, when you wake up, like that lights you up?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just adopted 2 cats, so that's it
Oh,
right now. I mean, parenting is pretty cool, just being able to, um, help someone grow into their compassion and see that happening, like, that
mhm.
just, like, lights me up. The coolest thing happened. So, you know how when you go to a sanctuary or you sign up for something, you get those little animal, um, envelopes in the mail that'll ask for donations.
Yeah.
So I have all of those coming to me all the time. I've literally never paid attention and I've thought, who actually donates in the mail? Like, who sends these back? How is this worth it? And my kid, Graham, saw one in the mail with a little picture of an animal on it. And he was like, "What is this?" And we opened it up and it showed like kind of a cold dog that's kept outdoors without shelter. And he was like, "Oh no, that dog." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, this organization helps these animals and they provide dog houses and we can donate to help the animals." And he's like, "I want to." And so he went and got his money that he was saving for a toy and he put $20 in there, which is a lot of money for a 4-year-old, and kind of decorated it. And we put a little note to say, "Thank you for saving the animals." And now every time one comes in the mail, he wants to take some of his money and donate it. So just things like
So
that, just
cute.
seeing the little choices that we can make um, that help the world, that make someone else's day. You think about who's receiving that on the other end too, with a sweet little note in
Mhm.
it, and it just inspires me to want to do that um, as well. Okay, one more little story. This weekend we were at a cafe, and my son was wearing a hedgehog shirt, and there was this older gentleman there, and he was just like, "Oh, where'd you get the hedgehogs from?" I guess he liked hedgehogs. And we were there just kind of doing some art in the cafe. And then man walked next door, bought a hedgehog, stuffed animal, and brought it back and gave it to my son. And I was just like blown away by the unexpected, like completely just next level thoughtfulness of people. I've
Mm,
just been seeing a lot of that lately, and
mm,
it makes me want to do that too. And I feel like those are the moments that light me up and make me want to like pay it forward and think,
yeah.
what can I do creatively to like make someone else's day a little better, or be helpful, or whatever. It can
Yeah.
be as simple as eating a plant-based meal that makes you feel like it's good for
Mm.
the world, or like writing a note to someone you haven't talked to in a while, but just finding those things that are moments of kind and positive connection, like that is light.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very sweet. Yeah, humans can be so good. Humans can be so kind. I mean, we have such a capacity for kindness and for love, and I think that yeah, when we get to witness that, it really inspires. I think you're right. It inspires us to do the same thing, whether it's like a phone call or paying for somebody's coffee or whatever it is. It's yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it spreads fast too. Like it's so
Mm,
inspiring and it makes like it just that type of kindness just spreads so fast. So if we
mm,
all are taking like a little bit of extra energy to think about how we can be kind, like how that amplifies throughout our world is just like we will never even know the impact it has. So,
yeah.
um yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have certainly done your share of kindness and spreading that word and information to people from all over the world, really. So thank you for all that you do, Michelle, and your work. And you definitely are still needed. In the beginning of the conversation, you were like, am I still needed? Yes, the answer is yes. For as long as you want to do it, you are definitely still needed. There's a lot of work to be done still. So thank you for all that you do. And thank you for spending time with me and for catching up. It's been great to see you again and to chat, to talk story, like we say in Hawaii.
I know it feels like it's been 2 seconds, but it's been so many years. It's kind of wild. It's
Yeah.
so nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, I feel kind of lit up from this conversation. So thank you.
Awesome. Yes. And for everybody, we're going to put in the show notes like all of the links to all of your many things, Michelle, and all your beautiful work that you do in the world. So look at the show notes. Definitely check Michelle out and have a beautiful day. Thanks,
Thank
Michelle.
you. And thanks everyone listening.